Commander Rylan's crystalline hands shook as he watched another defense station explode on the view screen. The beautiful blue light that marked his people's technology scattered into darkness like dying stars. 3 million Velen lives had just ended in that single blast. "How many ships do they have left?" Rylan asked, though he already knew the answer would break his heart. 17, Commander, his communications officer replied, her voice cracking. "Down from 200 this morning." The Kreth swarm covered the sky like a plague. Their organic ships moved like insects, millions of them, each one pulsing with hunger. The Velen had never seen war before. Their people had spent 10,000 years building art, music, and science. They had no weapons until the Kreth arrived 6 months ago. By then, it was too late to learn. Rylan looked at the ancient device sitting on his command console. It was a distress beacon, older than their civilization, left behind by the Galactic Council before it collapsed. His grandfather had shown it to him once in a museum. Now it was their last hope. "Will anyone even hear it?" his officer asked. "I don't know," Rylan admitted, "but we have nothing else." He pressed the activation button. The beacon hummed to life, sending its message across the stars in every direction. "We are dying. Please help. Anyone. Please." The message traveled through space at speeds faster than light, bouncing off relay stations that still functioned in dead systems. It spread like ripples in a pond, reaching farther and farther into the galaxy. 847 light-years away, on a blue and green planet called Earth. Captain Jiho Kang was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alert sounded. "Sir, we're picking up something strange," Lieutenant Yuna Choi called from her station. "It's an old frequency, really old, like ancient Galactic Council old." Jiho set down his cup and walked to her console. The coffee could wait. On her screen, a message played in a dozen different languages, translated by their computer. The words were simple and desperate. "How far?" Jiho asked. 847 light-years, give or take." "And how old is this message?" Yuna checked her instruments. "Based on signal degradation and relay timestamps. It was sent 43 minutes ago, sir." Jiho felt his pulse quicken. 43 minutes. If they were receiving it this fast, the relay network was still functional. That meant they could respond. That meant they could get there. "Send this to Fleet Command," Jiho ordered. "Mark it Priority 1. Tell them we have a distress call from an unknown species under attack." "Sir, we don't know anything about them," Yuna said carefully. "We don't know their politics, their enemies, or what we're walking into." "We know they're dying," Jiho said simply. "That's enough." 12 hours later, Jiho stood in front of Fleet Admiral Suna Park's desk. The Admiral was a woman who had fought in Earth's last major war and carried the scars to prove it. She listened to Jiho's report without interrupting, her dark eyes thoughtful. "The politicians won't like this," Suna said when he finished. "We've been in space for 43 years. We're still the new kids. Getting involved in alien wars could make enemies we can't afford." "Or friends we desperately need," Jiho countered. "Admiral, we've been alone in this galaxy since we figured out FTL travel. Every species we've found has been dead for centuries or hiding in their home systems. If someone is brave enough to call for help, shouldn't we be brave enough to answer?" Suna smiled slightly. "You sound like a recruiting poster, Captain." "Is that a no, ma'am?" "It's a yes." Suna stood and walked to her window, looking out at the shipyards orbiting Earth. "I'm authorizing a response fleet, 5 ships. You'll command. Take the Inchin's Fury and pick 4 more from the ready group." 5 ships against an unknown enemy force? 5 ships is what I can spare without leaving Earth defenseless, Suna said. "And Captain, we're human. We've faced worse odds before." Jiho assembled his fleet in 3 days. The Inchin's Fury would serve as flagship. He selected the Seoul's Hammer, Busan's Shield, Gwangju Rising, and Jeju's Vengeance to accompany them. Each ship carried 300 crew members and enough firepower to level a continent. On the bridge of Inchin's Fury, Jiho watched his crew prepare for departure. Lieutenant Yuna Choi ran tactical drills. Communications Officer Taeyang Han tested the translation systems. Dr. Hana Kim stocked the medical bay with supplies for unknown alien physiologies. Major Doyen Lee drilled his Marines until they moved like one organism. All ships report ready, Captain, Yuna announced. Jiho took a deep breath. 847 light-years. Most species would take months to travel that distance. Human FTL drives, built with desperation and innovation, could do it in 12 days. They were about to become the fastest rescue force in the galaxy. Plot a course for the source of the distress signal, Jiho ordered. Maximum FTL speed. Course plotted, sir. Then let's go answer their call. The 5 human warships vanished from Earth orbit in flashes of twisted spacetime, racing across the galaxy toward a species that didn't even know they were coming. Back in the Velen system, Commander Relan watched another colony world fall silent. The Kreth had finished consuming it. 4 billion Velen lives, gone. The swarm was now turning toward their homeworld. Any response to the beacon? Relan asked, though he knew the answer. Nothing, Commander. Relan nodded slowly. He hadn't really expected help. The galaxy was a cold, dark place. Every species that could fight had either died or retreated into isolation. The age of heroes and rescuers was over. The Velen would die alone, just another extinct civilization in a galaxy full of them. He didn't know that 5 ships were burning through space toward him at impossible speeds. He didn't know that the message his beacon sent had reached a world where evolution had been cruel and competition had been fierce. He didn't know that humans had been shaped by a planet that tried to kill them every single day for 3 million years. He didn't know that help was coming. And he definitely didn't know what kind of help it would be. The Kreth swarm tightened around HFY like a fist. They had fought hundreds of species before. Fragile things that broke easily. The Velen would be no different. The Kreth had never met a Deathworlder before. That was about to change. The human fleet emerged from FTL travel at the edge of the Velen system like ghosts appearing from nowhere. One moment, the space was empty. The next, 5 massive warships hung in the darkness, their engines cooling from the impossible journey. On the bridge of Inchen's Fury, Captain Jiho Kang studied the scanner readings. His eyes narrowed as the data came in. "Report," he said calmly. Lieutenant Yuna Choi worked her console with quick fingers. "Multiple signals, Captain. I'm reading." "Stars, this can't be right." "What is it?" "Millions of ships, sir. Biological signatures. They're swarming 3 planets and concentrating around a 4th. She looked up, her face pale. "The 4th planet is covered with cities. That must be their homeworld." Jiho felt his jaw tighten. Millions of ships. The Velen hadn't exaggerated their danger. "Time to reach the homeworld at full speed?" 4 hours, sir. "Make it 3. Push the engines." "Yes, sir." Communications Officer Taiyang Han suddenly straightened at his station. "Captain, we're being hailed. The signal is coming from the 4th planet." "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and a face appeared that made several crew members gasp. The being was beautiful in an alien way, with skin that looked like crystal catching light. But the crystal was cracked, and blue fluid leaked from wounds on his face. His large eyes were filled with exhaustion. "Unknown vessels," the alien said in a melodic voice. The computer translated instantly. "This is Commander Rylan of the Velen Coalition. Your arrival is unexpected. Please identify yourselves and your intentions." Jiho stood. "Commander Rylan, I am Captain Jiho Kang of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help." Rylan's eyes widened. "Terran? I don't know this species. How far have you traveled?" 847 light-years. The alien's mouth opened in shock. That's impossible. Such a journey should take months, even with the best FTL drives. You received our signal less than 2 weeks ago. 12 days, actually, Yuna said quietly. Relan shook his head in disbelief. Then his expression turned desperate. "Captain Kang, you must leave immediately. The Kreth swarm has millions of ships. They have destroyed empires that stood for 10,000 years. You cannot fight them." "No one can." Jiho's expression didn't change. "Commander, we didn't travel 800 light-years to run away. Tell us about the enemy." "They are parasites," Reland said, his voice breaking. They consume entire civilizations. They've already taken 3 of our colony worlds. 4 billion of my people are dead. We have 17 defense ships left. The swarm will reach our homeworld in hours. What kind of weapons do they use? Biological projectiles, acid sprays, boarding tactics. They overwhelm through numbers. Captain, please understand. We are grateful you came, but 5 ships cannot stand against millions. Save yourselves. Jiho exchanged glances with Yuna. Then he looked back at Rylan. Commander, how many ships did you say we brought? 5. That's right. We brought 5 ships instead of 1. Jiho's voice was steel. That should tell you something about our confidence. Rylan stared at him like he was insane. We'll need tactical data on the Kreth, Jiho continued. Ship compositions, attack patterns, anything you have, send it all. You're really going to fight them, Rylan whispered. That's why we're here. After the transmission ended, Dr. Hana Kim approached Jiho with a tablet. Captain, I analyzed the biological data from Commander Rylan's video feed. You need to see this. Jiho took the tablet and scrolled through the information. His eyebrows rose. Their bone density is 1/5 of ours, Dr. Kim explained. Their atmospheric pressure is 30% of Earth standard. Their gravity is 0.32 G, Captain. These people are fragile. Incredibly fragile. A fall that would bruise us could kill them. What kind of world did they evolve on? A paradise, by our standards. Stable climate, low gravity, few predators, abundant resources. They've never had to fight for survival. Jiho handed back the tablet. And now they're facing a species that attacks and consumes. They never had a chance, Dr. Kim said softly. In the Marine Bay, Major Doyen Lee briefed his troops. 200 Marines in powered armor stood at attention, their faces hard and ready. Listen up, Doyen said. We're about to make first contact with a hostile alien species. The Kreth swarm uses boarding tactics. That means there's a good chance we'll be fighting them face to face. He pulled up holographic images of the Kreth ships. They looked like massive insects, all chitin and organic matter. These things have been terrorizing the galaxy while we were still figuring out FTL travel. They've destroyed empires. They think they're the scariest things in space. Doyen smiled grimly. They've never met humans before. Let's show them what a real predator looks like. The Marines shouted in unison, their voices echoing through the bay. On the engineering deck, Chief Jiwon Nam ran final checks on the weapon systems. The railguns were charged and ready. Each one could fire a tungsten projectile at 4% the speed of light. The kinetic energy alone could crack a moon. Chief, the captain wants us to push the engines above safe limits, her assistant said nervously. Jiwon grinned. Human engineering isn't about safe limits. It's about building things that can take abuse and keep working. Tell the captain we can give him 140% power if he needs it. That could cause a reactor breach. Only if we were aliens, Jiwon said. We built redundancy into every system because we assume things will go wrong. That's the human way. Back on Velen Prime, Commander Rylan shared the conversation with his officers. They watched recordings of the human ships, analyzing their design. They're so heavily armored, one officer said. And those weapons, I've never seen anything like them. They're either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most foolish, another added. Rylan studied the image of Captain Jiho. The human had looked so calm, so certain, like someone who had faced impossible odds before and won. Or perhaps, Rylan said quietly, there's something we've never encountered. Perhaps they come from a world that made them strong. Commander, the human fleet is increasing speed. They'll reach our space in 2 hours. Rylan nodded. Prepare what's left of our defense forces. If these humans are willing to fight for us, the least we can do is stand beside them. He didn't say what everyone was thinking, that they would probably all die together. That 5 alien ships, no matter how impressive, couldn't stop millions of Kreth. But for the first time in months, Rylan felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. The human fleet raced toward Velen Prime, their engines burning bright in the darkness. Behind them, Earth waited in silent anticipation. Ahead of them, millions of Kreth ships swarmed like locusts. And in between, 5 human warships prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson it had forgotten. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in space isn't the biggest or the most numerous. Sometimes it's the survivor. The human fleet entered Velen space and immediately understood why the aliens had sounded so desperate. The Kreth swarm didn't just surround the planet. They covered it like a second atmosphere, millions of organic ships pulsing and writhing as they moved closer to the surface. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge of Inchin's Fury and watched the tactical display. Numbers scrolled across the screen. 2 million. 3 million. 4 million enemy ships. The computer stopped counting at 5 million and simply displayed extreme threat. Captain, Lieutenant Yuna said quietly, we're outnumbered 1 million to 1. Then they should have brought more ships, Jiho replied. He opened a channel to the fleet. All vessels. This is Kang. Battle Formation Delta. We're going straight through the center of their swarm. Target the largest ships first. Show them what kinetic weapons can do. Across the fleet, crews moved to their stations. On Seoul's Hammer, Weapons Officer Lieutenant Minho Bayek charged the railguns to full power. The weapons hummed with barely contained energy. Fire when ready, his captain ordered. Minho pressed the trigger. 6 tungsten rods, each weighing 200 kilograms, launched from Seoul's Hammer, at 4% the speed of light. They crossed the distance to the Kreth swarm in less than a second. The projectiles hit. The first Kreth ship simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy turned it into vapor and shrapnel. The projectile continued through, hitting another ship, then another, then another. A single tungsten rod punched through 17 Kreth vessels before its energy finally dispersed. 6 rods. 102 destroyed ships. The other human vessels opened fire. Commander Rylan watched from Velen Prime, his crystalline hands gripping the command console so hard they nearly cracked. The human weapons were like nothing he had ever seen. No energy beams, no plasma bursts, no shields. Just solid metal moving at impossible speeds. What are those weapons? His tactical officer whispered. Mass drivers, Rylan said, recognizing the ancient technology. Kinetic weapons. The Galactic Council banned them thousands of years ago because they were too dangerous. Why? Watch. The Kreth swarm tried to adapt. They swarmed toward the human ships, attempting to overwhelm them with numbers. This was their standard tactic. It had worked against every species they had fought before. It didn't work against humans. The 5 Terran warships moved through the Kreth formation like sharks through fish. Their armor was too thick for the Kreth's biological weapons to penetrate. Their point defense systems shot down thousands of boarding pods before they could attach. And their railguns never stopped firing. On Busan's shield, Chief Engineer Jiwon Nam monitored the reactor output. The gauges were deep in the red zone, showing 140% power. Alarms blared constantly. Should we reduce power? Her assistant shouted over the noise. No, Jiwon shouted back. The captain needs every bit of energy we can give him. Human ships are built to be abused. Let's prove it. The reactors screamed but held steady. They were designed by engineers who assumed everything would break and built backups for the backups. The Kreth adapted again. Thousands of their ships converged on Inchin's Fury, attempting to latch onto the hull and cut their way inside. Acid sprayed across the armor, and organic drills began to bite into the metal. Hull breach in Section 7, Yuna reported. They're trying to board us. Jiho nodded calmly. Major Lee, you're up. In the lower decks, Major Doyen Lee and his Marines had been waiting for this moment. They stood in powered armor, weapons ready, as the Kreth cut through the final barrier. The first Kreth warrior pushed through the breach. It looked like a nightmare combination of insect and crustacean, with razor-sharp claws and mandibles that dripped acid. It screamed a challenge and charged. Corporal Soman An shot it 3 times in the center mass. The creature fell, blue blood pooling around it. More Kreth poured through the breach. 10, 20, 50 of them, screeching and slashing. They had overwhelmed every species they had encountered through sheer ferocity and numbers. They had never fought humans before. The Marines met them in close combat. Powered armor turned aside claws that could cut through steel. Human reflexes evolved to dodge Earth's predators, were 5 times faster than the Kreth expected. And human weapons designed to kill everything from bears to other humans had no problem with alien biology. Soman held a corridor by herself against 40 Kreth warriors. She moved like water, dodging their attacks and responding with precise shots. When her rifle ran empty, she drew her sidearm. When that ran out, she used her combat knife. When a Kreth warrior managed to wound her shoulder, she simply fell back 10 meters and kept fighting. The Kreth had never encountered prey that fought back this hard. On the bridge, Jiho watched the battle reports. The Kreth were learning that boarding a human ship was suicide. They shifted tactics again, trying to overwhelm the fleet with pure numbers. They're concentrating fire on Gwangju Rising, Yuna reported. 200,000 ships converging. Have Gwangju fall back, Jeju's Vengeance, and Seoul's Hammer provide covering fire. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship supporting the others. When one vessel needed to reload or repair, the others filled the gap. They had trained for this kind of coordination for years. The Kreth hadn't trained at all. They relied on instinct and overwhelming force. 8 hours into the battle, the Kreth swarm began to retreat. They had lost 60% of their ships. The humans had lost 0. The Velen watched in stunned silence as the remaining Kreth vessels fled the system. Commander Rylan couldn't believe what he was seeing. 5 ships, he whispered. 5 ships defeated millions. Commander, the humans are hailing us. Jiho's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but satisfied. Commander Rylan, the immediate threat has been neutralized. The Kreth are retreating. We're going to pursue and make sure they don't come back. Captain Kang, we don't have words to thank you. Thank us after we finish the job, Jiho said. We'll be back in a few hours. The transmission ended. The 5 human warships turned as one and chased after the fleeing Kreth, their railguns still firing. On Velen Prime, the population emerged from their shelters and looked up at the sky. The dark cloud of Kreth ships was gone. In their place, 5 human vessels blazed across the stars like avenging angels. Who are they? Someone asked. Humans, Rylan said. They call themselves humans. What kind of world produces warriors like that? Rylan thought about the heavily armored ships, the devastating weapons, the Marines who fought 40 enemies without retreating. He thought about a species that could cross 800 light-years in 12 days to answer a distress call from strangers. I don't know, he admitted, but I intend to find out. 10 hours later, the human fleet returned. The Kreth swarm had been completely driven from Velen space. The survivors had scattered across the galaxy, spreading word of the species that fought without fear. Jiho sat in his captain's chair and allowed himself to feel the exhaustion. His crew had fought for 18 straight hours, but they had won. They had saved an entire civilization. Captain, Yuna said softly. Message from Fleet Admiral Park on Earth. She's asking for a full report. Tell her mission accomplished, Jiho said. The Velen are safe. And the cost? Jiho looked at the damage reports. Hull breaches on 3 ships. 1 reactor running at reduced capacity. 47 wounded crew members. 0 deaths. Acceptable, he said. He didn't know it yet, but the Battle of Velen Prime would change the galaxy forever. News of the human victory was already spreading. Species that had hidden in fear for centuries were listening and wondering. If 5 human ships could do this, what could 50 do? What could 500 do? The galaxy was about to find out. 3 days after the battle, Commander Rylan stood in a shuttle heading toward Inchin's Fury. His wounds had been treated, and his people were beginning to repair their world. But he needed to understand what had saved them. He needed to understand humans. Commander, are you sure about this? His aide asked nervously. We don't know anything about their biology. Their ship might be dangerous. They crossed the galaxy to save us, Rylan said. The least we can do is thank them in person. The shuttle docked with the human warship, and immediately, Rylan felt wrong. The air that rushed in was hot and thick. His breathing became labored, like he was drowning on dry land. The pressure, he gasped. It's so high. A human appeared at the airlock. Dr. Hana Kim smiled gently. Commander Relan, welcome aboard. I apologize for the discomfort. We've prepared a special section of the ship with your atmospheric requirements. She led them through corridors that felt oppressive to the Velen. The gravity pulled at Relan's body like an invisible weight. Each step was exhausting. His bones ached. How do you live in this? Relan's aide whispered. This is normal for us, Dr. Kim said. She was walking normally, easily, as if the crushing gravity meant nothing. Our world has stronger gravity than yours. They reached a room where the atmosphere had been adjusted. Rylan breathed easier. But he noticed the humans in the room were wearing breathers now. You changed your ship for us, Rylan said, moved by the gesture. Of course, Dr. Kim replied. You're our guests. Captain Jiho entered the room, and Rylan was struck by how solid he looked. The human moved with easy confidence, his body thick with muscle. His eyes were sharp and calculating. This was not a prey species. Commander Rylan, Jiho said, offering his hand. It's good to meet you in person. Rylan carefully touched the human's hand, mimicking the gesture he'd seen in videos. Jiho's skin was warm, almost hot. His grip was gentle, but Rylan could feel the strength in it. This human could probably crush Rylan's crystalline bones without even trying. Captain Kang, my people owe you everything. We would like to understand who saved us. Will you tell us about Earth? Jiho nodded and gestured to seats. As they sat, Dr. Kim pulled up holographic images of a blue and green planet. This is Earth, she said. Our homeworld. Rylan stared at it. It was beautiful, but something about it seemed wrong. The oceans were too vast. The continents looked chaotic, covered in green and brown. What is your gravity? Rylan asked. 9.8 meters per second squared, Jiho said. Rylan did the quick calculation and his eyes widened. That's more than 3 times our gravity. Yes. And your atmospheric pressure? 101 kilopascals at sea level. That's... Rylan couldn't finish. It was more than 3 times Velen standard. How do you breathe in that? It's what we evolved for, Dr. Kim explained gently. Our bodies adapted to high pressure and high gravity over millions of years. She pulled up more images. Creatures with fangs and claws, plants covered in thorns, microscopic organisms that looked deadly even in pictures. What are these? Rylan asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Predators, Jiho said simply. Earth has thousands of species that hunt and kill. For most of our evolution, we were prey. Things hunted us. We had to learn to fight back or go extinct. Your whole world is like this? Yes. Rylan felt his mind struggling to understand. On Velen, we have no large predators. Our biggest threat was falling from trees. We evolved in peace and abundance. Dr. Kim nodded sympathetically. We know. We've studied your biology. Commander, can I be honest with you? Please. By our standards, you're incredibly fragile. Your bone density is very low. Your immune system is weak. Your reaction time is slow. If you fell in Earth's gravity, the impact would probably kill you. Rylan looked down at his hands. He had always thought his people were normal. Now he realized they were the unusual ones. What do you call a world like Earth? He asked quietly. A death world, Dr. Kim said. Scientists classify planets by habitability. Most spacefaring species come from Class 3 or Class 4 worlds. Stable, peaceful, with moderate gravity and few threats. Earth is Class 12. What does that mean? It means Earth is barely habitable even for the species that evolved there. It means every single day, our ancestors had to fight to survive. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. Everything tried to kill us. Jiho leaned forward. Commander, you asked why we're good at fighting. It's because we had no choice. We fought or we died. For 3 million years, that was our reality. But you came to help us, Rylan said. You didn't have to. We're strangers. That's also part of being human, Jiho said. We survived because we helped each other, because we formed groups and protected the weak. It's in our nature to answer distress calls. Rylan felt tears forming in his eyes. You're predators with compassion. We're survivors who remember what it's like to need help. Dr. Kim showed more images. Humans climbing mountains in thin air. Humans surviving in frozen wastelands. Humans living in deserts where temperatures could kill most species. Humans diving deep underwater without breathing equipment. You can hold your breath? Rylan asked in shock. For several minutes, yes. Some humans can go 10 minutes or more. We can barely go 30 seconds. I know. Rylan learned more details that amazed and horrified him. Humans could survive injuries that would instantly kill Velen. They had redundant organs. Their bodies could heal from wounds that seemed fatal. They could go days without food, weeks without full nutrition. Their immune systems fought off thousands of diseases constantly. How much sleep do you need? Rylan asked. 6 to 8 hours per day, Jiho said. We need 14. We know. The conversation continued for hours. Rylan learned that humans had been fighting each other for their entire history, that they had developed weapons that could destroy their own planet, that they had come close to extinction multiple times and survived through stubbornness and innovation. You scare me, Rylan admitted finally. Not because you're cruel, but because you're so much stronger than us. What's to stop you from conquering us? Jiho met his eyes steadily. The same thing that made us cross the galaxy to save you. We know what it's like to suffer. We know what it's like to face extinction. We won't inflict that on others. How can I trust that? You can't. Not yet. Trust has to be earned. Jiho stood. But Commander, we didn't come here for conquest. We came because someone called for help. That's all the reason we needed. Rylan stood as well, struggling with the gravity. The galaxy is going to learn about you, about humans, about Deathworlders. What will happen then? I don't know, Jiho admitted. Some species will probably fear us. Some might want to be our enemies. But maybe some will want to be our friends. And which do you hope for? Friends. Always friends. Jiho smiled. The galaxy's been quiet for too long. Species hiding in fear, civilizations dying alone. Maybe it's time for that to change. Rylan was escorted back to his shuttle. As he left, he looked back at the humans working on their ship. They moved with such ease in that terrible gravity. They breathed that thick air without effort. They were beings shaped by a world that tried to kill them every day. And yet they had come to save strangers. Back on Velen Prime, Rylan called a meeting of the High Council. He shared everything he had learned. The council members listened in stunned silence. What should we do? One counselor asked. We thank them, Rylan said firmly. We learn from them, and we tell the galaxy what they did for us. But they're so dangerous. They're dangerous to their enemies, Rylan corrected. To their friends. They're the best allies you could ask for. He pulled up the images of Earth one more time. That beautiful, terrible world. The humans have a saying, Rylan said. They say that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. They come from a world that tried very hard to kill them, and it made them the strongest species in the galaxy. The message spread. Within days, dozens of species knew about humanity, about Earth, about the Deathworlders who answered distress calls. The galaxy would never be the same. The Kreth Swarm made their decision 3 months after the Battle of Velen Prime. The news of their defeat had spread across the galaxy, and for the first time in their existence, other species were fighting back. Prey that used to surrender were now resisting. The Kreth's empire of fear was crumbling. They needed to eliminate the source of this resistance. They needed to destroy Earth. The Kreth gathered their forces from across their territory. 10 million bioships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled. They would burn the human homeworld to ash and show the galaxy what happened to those who defied them. The swarm entered Earth's solar system expecting to find a primitive world with minimal defenses. Instead, they found a fortress. Fleet Admiral Suna Park stood in the command center on Luna, watching the sensor readings with grim satisfaction. She had been preparing for this since the moment she sent Jiho to rescue the Velen. Admiral, the Kreth fleet is emerging near Neptune's orbit, her tactical officer reported. Estimated count, 10 million ships. Acknowledged. Execute Defense Plan Omega. Across Earth's solar system, defenses that had been building for 3 months came online. Orbital platforms around Luna, Mars, and Earth itself. Hidden weapons in the asteroid belt. Nuclear missile silos on every continent. 200 warships of the Terran Defense Fleet. Every combat-capable vessel humanity possessed. And 1 billion armed humans who had spent their entire existence preparing to defend their homeworld. The Kreth began their advance, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They had faced organized defenses before. They always won through sheer force. They had never attacked a Deathworld before. Admiral Bowman Shin commanded the lunar defense grid. As the Kreth approached Mars, he gave the order. All railgun platforms, open fire. 50 orbital platforms around Luna lit up the darkness. Tungsten rods launched at relativistic speeds, crossing millions of kilometers in minutes. The first volley hit the leading edge of the Kreth swarm. 3,000 ships vanished in an instant. The Kreth didn't slow down. They couldn't comprehend the idea of retreat. They were apex predators, and predators didn't run. The human fleet met them near Mars. 200 ships against 10 million should have been a massacre. For the first few hours, the Kreth thought it would be. Then they realized the humans weren't trying to win through direct combat. They were buying time. Every second the human fleet held the Kreth at Mars was another second for Earth's orbital defenses to prepare. Every Kreth ship destroyed was one less that would reach the homeworld. The human ships fought like cornered animals because that's exactly what they were. On Sol's hammer, Lieutenant Minho Bayek fired his railguns until the barrels glowed red-hot. When ammunition ran low, he switched to missiles. When missiles ran out, he rammed his ship into a cluster of Kreth vessels, ejecting in an escape pod at the last second. The Kreth pushed through. 5 million ships remained. They broke past Mars and accelerated toward Earth. That's when they entered the asteroid belt. Hundreds of mining stations had been converted to weapons platforms. Humans who spent their lives extracting minerals from space rocks now used those same rocks as ammunition. Asteroids, fitted with basic thrusters and guidance systems, became the largest bullets ever fired. The Kreth lost another million ships to the belt. 4 million remained. They could see Earth now, that blue jewel hanging in space. They increased speed, eager to finish this. Earth's orbital defense grid activated. Every space station, every satellite, every orbital platform opened fire. Thousands of railguns, missile pods, and laser arrays. Earth had been building these defenses since humans first reached space, constantly preparing for the day when something from the stars would try to destroy them. President Yoon Nam watched from the command bunker in Seoul. She had ordered the evacuation of coastal cities and the mobilization of every military force on the planet. But she knew that if the Kreth reached the surface, millions would die. Madam President, her aide said quietly, the fleet is requesting permission for nuclear weapons release. Yoonji closed her eyes briefly. Nuclear weapons in space. It was a line they had hoped never to cross. Granted, she said. Admiral Suna gave the order. All ships, weapons free. Authorization code Omega-7. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. 200 nuclear warheads launched from the surviving fleet ships. Not the primitive weapons of the 20th century, but modern thermonuclear devices designed for space combat. Each one was a miniature sun. The Kreth swarm flew directly into the nuclear field. The detonations lit up space like a new constellation. 2 million more Kreth ships died in atomic fire. 2 million remained. They were close now, entering Earth's atmosphere. Debris from destroyed ships burned up as meteors. The sky turned orange with falling fire. On the ground, humans looked up and saw their doom approaching. Then they picked up their weapons and prepared to fight. The Kreth ships began landing in North America, Asia, and Africa. Millions of the creatures poured out, ready to consume another world. They were met by 7 billion humans who refused to die quietly. In New York, police and civilians fought side by side. In Tokyo, the self-defense forces used every weapon they had. In Lagos, citizens turned their city into a fortress. In Mumbai, millions of people fought with whatever they could find. The Kreth had never encountered a species where every individual was willing to fight. where children learned to run and hide while adults formed defensive lines, where the elderly gave directions from rooftops while the young fought in the streets. Earth wasn't a planet. It was a weapon, and every human was ammunition. Major Doyen Lee led his Marines in Seoul, where President Yoonji refused to evacuate. They fought through streets they had known their whole lives, defending their home with desperate fury. Corporal Soman An, still recovering from wounds at Velen Prime, stood on the defensive line in Busan. When a Kreth warrior broke through and rushed towards civilian shelters, she tackled it barehanded, buying time for others to shoot it down. Dr. Hana Kim worked in a hospital in Gwangju, treating soldiers and civilians. When Kreth broke into the building, she picked up a rifle and defended her patients. The battle for Earth lasted 6 days. On the first day, the Kreth seemed unstoppable. On the second day, their advance slowed. On the third day, they stopped gaining ground. On the fourth day, they began to retreat. On the fifth day, they ran for their ships. On the sixth day, the last Kreth ship fled Earth's atmosphere, and the human fleet pursued them all the way out of the solar system. 10 million Kreth had attacked Earth. Fewer than 10,000 escaped. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Humanity had defended their homeworld against impossible odds. A Deathworld species had proven they were the deadliest thing in space. 2 weeks after the battle, Captain Jiho Kong, promoted to Commodore, sat in President Yoonji's office. His uniform was clean, but his eyes showed the exhaustion of weeks of combat. "We're receiving distress calls," Yoonji said, showing him a display. 43 species, all asking for help against various threats. Pirates, raiders, the remnants of the Kreth. "What do you want to do?" Jiho asked. "I want to know if we should help them." Jiho thought about the Velen, who had called for help when no one else would answer. He thought about Earth, where humans had survived by helping each other for 3 million years. "We should help," he said firmly. "It's what we do." Yoonji smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd say. I'm authorizing the expansion of the defense fleet. We're going to need more ships." Over the next months, humanity's role in the galaxy transformed. The Terran defense fleet grew to 500 ships. Humans began training other species in defensive tactics. Technology sharing agreements were established. Mutual defense pacts were signed. The Velen were the first to join formally. Commander Rylan, now commanding the first Velen warship built to human specifications, stood beside Jiho as they answered another distress call together. "Strange, isn't it?" Rylan said as they prepared to jump to FTL. 6 months ago, we were dying alone. Now we're fighting alongside the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "We're only dangerous to our enemies," Jiho corrected with a smile. "To our friends, we're reliable." "Is that what we are? Friends?" "I'd like to think so." The joint human-Velen fleet jumped to FTL, racing toward another species in need. Behind them, more ships were being built. More alliances were being formed. More species were learning that they didn't have to face threats alone. On Earth, President Yoonji stood before the General Assembly and spoke words that would define humanity's future. "For 3 million years, we survived because we helped each other. Because we formed communities and protected the weak. Because we refused to let fear make us cruel. We will carry that spirit to the stars. Any species that calls for help will find humanity answers. Any civilization under threat will find we stand ready. This is not conquest. This is not empire. This is simply who we are." The age of isolation was ending. The age where species hid in fear was over. The galaxy had entered a new era. And at its heart were humans. The Deathworlders who refused to let others die alone. The survivors who remembered what it meant to need help and chose to give it freely. Commodore Jiho Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone was in trouble. Someone was afraid. Someone was sending a distress signal into the void, hoping against hope that someone would answer. "Plot a course for the signal," Jiho ordered. "Yes, sir." The ship jumped to FTL, and the stars blurred around them. Help was on the way. It always would be.